Hello, this is Mrs. Politsky, and I have your notes for Chapter 2, Section 1 of Government, talking about the colonial period. And so I want to kind of go into some of the different political influences on our government. Obviously, the Greeks, especially ancient Greece, Athens specifically, they had a direct democracy. They also believed in the idea of majority rule. Secondly, the Romans. The Romans had a constitution. They also had a senate, kind of along the lines of representative government, but they believed in the concept of sovereignty. This whole idea that kind of stems along the line of majority rule, meaning that the people have of a region or a land have certain rights and certain authority. Third, the Middle Ages. We have the concept of supremacy of a leader. This is a time period of kind of divine right monarchs, but the idea that the leader is your authority. And then finally, we have the concept of social contracts that came about during the time of the Enlightenment. This idea that people have certain natural rights, this idea of limited government stems back a little further into the Middle Ages when we talk about the Magna Carta and such. All of these are big influences on our government here in the United States. So we want to take a look at two ideas about government that come from our English heritage. The first thing is limited government. Limited government is this idea that the power of the ruler or the government is not all powerful, it's limited. This kind of goes back to the time of the Magna Carta. The idea was kind of put into practice because people or representatives in parliament had to approve the taxes, not just, the king saying, I want to raise taxes so I have more money. It had to go through the people. A ruler couldn't interfere with the doings of parliament. And finally, if you were a person accused of a crime, you had the right to have a trial by jury. All those are very important aspects of the limited government. The other is representative government. Representative government basically means the people elect delegates to make laws and conduct the affairs of government. And this is put into place. It's really based off of the concepts of John Locke. John Locke was kind of a philosopher during the time of the Enlightenment, and he believed that people possessed certain natural rights that were God given, and that would be the right to life, liberty, and property. Our friend Thomas Jefferson is going to play off of that when he writes some of the words to the Declaration of Independence, talking about the fact that we had the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So let's take a look at some of the documents that kind of affect American colonies. First, I mentioned the Magna Carta. This goes back to the year 1215. King John, who was the King of England at the time, was wanting to raise taxes, and some of his noblemen were upset by that, and they gathered at a place called Runnymede to make him sign this document, which basically says that the king is going to have to work with Parliament to establish and to govern. In 1620, about the time that we see the establishment of the Massachusetts colony, we have the Mayflower Compact, written by those people who were aboard the Mayflower. And basically, these colonists used this compact to help choose their leaders and the rules that they wanted to have established to govern themselves once they reached land. The idea is that, when the ship got offshore, they wanted to make sure that they had some idea about how things were going to operate as far as power once people got onto land. In 1628, back in England, we had the Petition of Rights. This goes back to King Charles I and some of his disputes with Parliament over his desire to collect and raise taxes. There was a time he actually sent Parliament home for a period of time. because he just didn't get along with them. And when he reconvened them because he needed to collect taxes, they forced him to sign this. And so it basically says a monarch cannot collect taxes without the consent of Parliament. In 1636, we have the what is known as either the General Fundamentals or the Great Fundamentals of Massachusetts. This is kind of like a constitution, kind of a precursor to the American Constitution that we're going to see in the late 1780s. Anyway, it established a system of laws for the colonies, particularly Massachusetts, and a court that you could have your affairs tried. Down the road, a few years later, in Connecticut, we had the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. And it's basically this document that the people basically said that they had the right to elect a government, elect their judges and their representatives. Got to remember, some of the colonies, the governors were actually appointed by the king, and not all of them were that way, and this is one example. In 1688, we had the English Bill of Rights. This is after we had the Glorious Revolution, where William and Mary come to power after King James II is kind of disposed of. Anyway, it basically says that the monarch doesn't have divine right, and that they are limited as what they could do as a ruler. And again, it kind of establishes a lot of other little principles that we'll talk about, but certainly it defines the role of not only the monarch, but also Parliament. Finally, we have the two treaties on government. This was written by John Locke. It's one of those documents that was a huge influence on the Americans, but it basically said that all people were born with natural rights, life, liberty, and property. It's an example of the social contract. All right, thank you very much.